for those who are fans of the series Love is Blind, season 6 came out with their reunion recap Wednesday of this week. So I've been watching Love is Blind with my wife probably since season 1, maybe either season 1 or season 2, but we've watched majority of the seasons, I think, from what I can remember. I could be wrong, because apparently during the reunion there were some faces and some couples I did not recognize, particularly from season 4. So I don't think we watched season 4. But anyways, this season of Love is Blind was rough. Was really, really rough. But what I wanted to talk about more specifically was Clay and his experience, and really what he shared during the recap that I thought was actually really beneficial as a Black man and for Black men. So during this season, even though there were a lot of the guys were trash, a lot of the guys were trash, and that included Clay. And something in watching this season, though, I empathized with him. I empathized with some of the struggles that he had in approaching a relationship with AD, who was an amazing, wonderful woman based off of what we can see from the show, right? She's beautiful. Clearly, she's intelligent. And she really, really, you could tell that she was really, really putting in an effort to do the experiment well and to have a relationship with Clay. Like, she was looking forward to it. She was all in. And, at this point, spoilers or whatever, if you haven't watched it, sorry. Find out that Clay says no to her at the altar, and it's devastating. It's devastating. And one of the things that he ends up bringing up during the reunion is that he got in his own way. He got in his own way, even though he loved and cared for and actually wanted a relationship with AD. He got in his own way because of things that he needed to deal with in his own life. And I empathize with that because there are a lot of issues that I think as men, we don't know to deal with until we get into relationships, which sucks. It's not good. And like the 3 things that I really wanted to point out about the reunion and about the season and about what I think we can learn from Clay and from this, the season of Love is Blind is 3 things: the impact of fathers, the importance of therapy, and the influences of images in your lives. First, I want to talk about the impact of fathers. So with Clay, from what I remember, and again, I don't have any clips or anything like that, just kind of just off the top of my head. From what you can see during the experiment, during the show, is you find out that Clay doesn't really have a good relationship with his father. And sadly, I think as a lot of Black men, similar to Clay, we like to play off our relationship with our fathers, even if they are bad. Like during the wedding episode, before, he goes on the altar or whatever, before he has this really awkward conversation with his dad, right? And he's kind of like looking for advice, looking for help, trying to have a connection with his father. But I think anybody that, is like an empath or aware, you can see that relationship was not good, that there is distance there, and that some of the only things that they connect on is probably sports and womanizing, right? But there is this emotional disconnect that Clay has with his father, whether his father is aware of it or not. On that tape, like in the show, you can see it. And I feel so bad for Clay because I think maybe now at this point, since he's gone through therapy, but I think at that moment, he didn't realize how much he was hurt and was in need of a relationship with his father. And that's the case, I believe, for a lot of Black men who don't have good fathers in their lives, whether they're biological fathers or stepdads or whatever. There is an absence of fathers. There's an absence of relationship that has a huge impact on the way that we develop as men. And it has a huge impact on how we relate to other people, how we relate to other men, how we relate to women, how we relate in our relationships, even how we relate to our mothers. And it sucks. And I think that was a major nugget that I think something that was pointed out in this season, and particularly during the reunion. You come to find out this relationship has had a huge, devastating impact on Clay that it keeps him from even pursuing an amazing woman in his life, because he's so concerned about ending up like his father. He's so concerned about not being able to be faithful and having really, to some degree, I think, like low self-esteem, and not being able to see that he could be better, that he could grow and actually be a good husband. In the reunion, he talks about, as they're going through the wedding process, he's having these conflicting thoughts. He's going back and forth. He's like, I want to be with AD, but I'm a terrible person, really. Like, I'm a womanizer. I'm like my dad or whatever. Like, he has all these thoughts wrestling back and forth, and he's struggling to choose, and he's struggling to overcome that. And I get that. And it's not an excuse. Like, he took ownership of the fact that he disrespected her. He wasted her time. He disrespected her family. But it's that mental wrestling, that emotional wrestling that I can really empathize with, because you have to make that choice. Like, am I going to pursue something that's unknown to me? So for Clay's situation, he didn't have good examples. As many of us as Black men don't have many good examples of what it means to be a good husband. And so we have to jump out into the unknown and kind of create these new images for ourselves. And it sucks because, like, again, this impact of fathers, the lack of fathers, the lack of good fathers to be there to actually help raise boys and into men. We see it. This is like a perfect example of what it is. And even in the conversation his dad was having with his mom, his dad was still skirting around like the fact that he messed up, and that he messed up his son, that he messed up his wife's life because of the choices that he made. Like, that matters. Like, that matters. And I think that's something that we need to pay attention to as men, is like, even though we may know it, we shouldn't brush it off. We shouldn't necessarily respond and act like Clay was acting. Oh, that's just kind of like my dad. That's just how he is. He's kind of like a womanizer, and sort of like, our relationship is what it is, like, no, your dad screwed you over, and it sucks. There are things that we've picked up from our fathers that suck. And it's hard to accept that. It's the same case in my life. Even though I love my dad and I'm grateful that I'm in a relationship with him, there are things that I've picked up from him because I've seen it. The decisions that he's made that has impacted my life, impacted my family. And it's things that I don't like. And they're things that I have to unlearn, and things that I have to detach from, because of stuff that he modeled, intentionally or not, he modeled. And the impact of fathers is that we leave marks. I'm not a father, but like, as men, we just leave marks on other people. Whether you're a father, whether you're a teacher, whatever it is, you're a brother, you have an impact. And that's something that needs to be taken seriously. Whether you're a father or not, understanding that you have an impact on those around you, that you have that influence to cause harm or to actually be beneficial. And so in this conversation, in this reunion, in this season, we see this, that there's fathers, the lack of good fathers has such a huge impact on how boys develop. And I feel so bad that that was the case for Clay, that he had this huge daddy wound, these dad issues that he's been ignoring and not paying attention to, and kind of like brushing off, until he got to this point where he kind of had to face it, because he wanted to get to another level. He wanted to get to a new place where he's in a beautiful, intimate relationship with a beautiful, amazing woman. But because he hadn't dealt with it, it stopped him. It stopped him from making a better decision. I think that goes into the next point, like the importance of therapy. Jokingly, whenever we watch the show, me and my wife watch the show, we always wonder, like, are these people who are like contestants or whatever who are going on the show, like, are they being evaluated? Are they being checked? Like, are people really going in and seeing are they in good mental health? Are they in good emotional well-being? Because especially this season, it doesn't seem like it. It doesn't seem like it. Particularly with the guys, it seemed like a lot of them came in with really bad intentions, with a lot of trauma, a lot of issues, a lot of lack of emotional intelligence. And they just really broke a lot of women's hearts. And it sucks. That's not right. People shouldn't be coming onto this show. I mean, people shouldn't be entering relationships with all the baggage that they carry. And it sucks that happens. Like, I know even in my marriage, in my relationship, I had a lot of baggage that I had to process, and a lot of stuff I still processing that I need to deal with, which is the benefit of and the importance of why we need to go to therapy. And I'm grateful that Clay admitted that. He pointed that out and explained that, after this experience, after the wedding and saying no and all of that, I needed to get therapy. I had to get therapy. And then he also mentioned, he's like, I had to find different ones. I had to go to different therapists to find the right one that was going to work for me and help me, even though it's becoming popular and not in like a trendy kind of way. But we're realizing how mental health and emotional health is a necessity of overall well-being. Therapy is still kind of taboo, especially for us as men. But it's important. We need it. Whether you're in a relationship or not, we need therapy so that we can become our best selves, so that we can become beneficial, so that we can be healthy and whole. I'm very, very grateful that he expressed that he was transparent about that. It's like, yeah, I'm going to therapy and trying to deal with all this stuff. Even in the midst of his therapy, realizing how much damage he caused AD and how much stuff that he really needed to work through, tying back to stuff with his dad. Like the fact that he expressed on the show that he would be with his dad as he committed adultery, as he cheated on his mom. Like, that's traumatic in itself. That's traumatic. And to carry that, for that long, to hold that secret, that's not good. Again, there are a lot of experiences I'm sure many of us have had with our fathers, whether that's abandonment, neglect, abuse, emotional detachment, and all these things impact us as children, impact us as young boys, and for our sisters, young girls. Like those father wounds, those daddy wounds are deep, and they're really, really prevalent and deep within our community, and we need help to process them. That's why we need to go to therapy. And again, I think that's something to take note of from the show and from Clay's experience, to say like, yeah, I was messed up and I'm still messed up and I'm still working through some stuff. And therapy is helping me. He expressed that he loves AD and that he still wants to be with her or whatever. And he feels like he's in a better place. But again, him admitting that like, no, I needed to do this work so I can become a better me, that I need to become healthier. And that's the case for all of us. Again, whether you're in a relationship or not, get therapy. Get therapy, because there's stuff under the layers of our lives that we're probably overlooking. You need somebody to come in and check you like a doctor. So go to the doctor too, but get therapy. Therapy is so crucial in us growing and becoming beneficial and healthy overall. And the third point, other thing that I thought was good from Clay's experience in this season of Love is Blind, and particularly during the reunion, is Clay admitting the influence of seeing a good image of what it means to be a husband, albeit it was from another contestant from Love is Blind, which happened to be another Black man. I think his name was Brett from season 4. And I thought, there was a lot of crazy stuff that was happening during the reunion or whatever. But that segment, Clay and AD segment, I thought at least impacted me the most, right? Because I think there was a lot of actual, not to say that other people weren't like that, but to me, there was a lot of actual vulnerability and honesty and growth in that moment. I really loved and I appreciated the fact that Clay admitted that it's like, yeah, I hadn't seen Love is Blind before, but when I did watch the season, it was a season, I think season 4, I guess, but the season that had Brett on there. And I think he expressed to AD that seeing that guy gave me an example of what a good husband should be. And even though it was mixed, from my understanding of what he was saying, it was a mixture of inspiration, but also intimidation, because it's kind of like, wow, this is what a perfect husband should be like. And also wrestling with like, I don't know if I can be like that, and having to be honest and truthful about it. And I thought that was beautiful in that moment. It was short, but in that moment that Clay expressed that to Brett, he was like, yo, these are my words, but like, yo, I really admire you for being the man that you are and the husband that you are to your wife. Brett, in response, saying like, I'm humbled by your words and by his compliments, especially since he had he saw issues with his own parents. I don't know if it's explained or talked about in that season. I can assume, and I could be wrong, but I can assume that his dad was probably jacked up too, because that is the major case, the majority of experiences for us as Black men, as Black boys in our community. Our dads and our fathers be making really, really bad decisions and not showing up well for us, not showing up well in our community. And I get it. There are people out there probably like, well, it's not all dads. Sure. I think it's the majority though. Whether your dad was present, maybe he was absent emotionally. The thing is, there's a systemic issue plaguing our community that stems and starts and it originates with men, with fathers. And it sucks. And I can understand why Brett feels humbled, because it's like, he's probably like, yo, I'm trying my best. I'm trying my best to just show up, I didn't intend to necessarily be a role model for another grown man. I didn't intend to end up being like an example of what a good husband is. And that can be a heavy weight. It can be a heavy weight to be that example, to be that role model, intentionally or not. I can't remember. I think it might have been like Charles Barkley at one point talking about he ain't nobody's role model, but he's a celebrity athlete. Anyways, that's again another example of men, we got to take that responsibility, that accountability, because we have that influence, we have that impact. That's part of our design. We're supposed to be, I talked about this in another video that I did about leaving a mark, and the mark that we leave as men, but we have influence, whether it's good or bad, but we have to do the work to choose that it's going to be good. That's on us. But seeing that moment where Clay expressed to Brett, yo, I see you, you're doing a good job. And I respect that. And Brett taking the compliment as best as he could, But I'm sure understanding like the weight of it, like, I'm trying to be a good husband. I'm trying to be a good representative of a man, particularly as a Black man. And it's heavy, but it's also necessary. Like, it's necessary for us to have images, for young boys to have images, for young men to have images, even older men to have images of other men to strive to be better at. Like, I think sometimes the only images that we look for, or the images that we focus on, are men being successful when it comes to athletics and like finances, or even in a very degenerate way, getting girls. But very rarely is it about emotional maturity. Very rarely is it about actually being a family man or being a great asset to our community. It's usually motivated by selfish desires, not service, not selflessness. And that sucks. Like, we need more images. We need more images of that. And I'm grateful, again, from this episode, just from this little segment on this this 90-minute episode, like, and in this particular season, like, seeing the journey of a young Black man having to deal with the realities of his upbringing, the realities of his traumas, the realities of his own shortcomings, and from what we can see and understand, putting in the work to actually heal and to actually get to a better place. Realizing the impact of fathers, realizing the importance of therapy, and realizing how much good images influence us. And so I'm grateful that, whether he knew it or not, I'm grateful that Clay was willing to be transparent and vulnerable and share his journey for the world to see. And I hope that as Black men, I mean, I don't know how many guys actually sit and watch Love is Blind by themselves, or even willing to sit down and watch it with their partner or whatever. But we do need to see more examples of that. We need to watch that kind of stuff, because it helps us. It can help us to grow and develop. And some notes I wrote down and wanted to share is that, like, even though I'm grateful that Clay went through this experience, and I think this could be a good example for men, I will say it's not right that relationships, real life experiences, it's not good that very often men have to go through relationships to get their stuff together. We shouldn't have to experience challenges in our relationships to wake up and gain awareness of our issues. And I'm deeply sorry to all the women who have been catalysts for men to improve themselves and develop. And, that's a result of poor community that doesn't do a good job of raising men. And I feel so bad for AD that her experience, I mean, she can communicate her own experience. But from what I saw, like, her being on the show, I could tell it was just a huge challenge, from the objectification that she was experiencing on the show, and from like the comments and people's opinions and stuff like that. And then also on top of that, dealing with, a broken man, a broken man who has a long list, I'm sure, of traumas and things that he needs to deal with. And he was wasting her time and playing with her heart. And I apologize, if I could, on the behalf of, Black men specifically. Like, I apologize for all the times that us as men, we haven't shown up ready for relationships. Apologize for the times that, like, we have, intentionally or not, taken advantage of the emotional labor and the sacrifice that you, as our sisters and as women, have put into relationships in dealing with broken men, dealing with immature men. It's not right, and it sucks. And the thing is, I think we live in a time right now where we can change that, where we don't have to go through that process of breaking girls' hearts just to get better, because it's not right. It's not right for women to have to suffer that way just so that we can get it together. Because the thing is, like, again, that's a result of the broken aspects of our community. Again, I'm sorry to all the women who have been catalysts for men to improve themselves and develop. That's a result of a poor community that doesn't do a good job of raising men. When things are out of alignment, it puts too much pressure on another part of the system. So, like I said at the beginning, the impact of fathers. Like, if fathers were being beneficial men, comprehensive men, and showing up for their sons and daughters and showing up in the community, things could be a lot different. When things are out of alignment, it puts too much pressure on another part of the system. So you got men and women, right? Fathers, mothers, whatever. If women are the backbone of our community, they're broken, beat up, and overburdened. Instead of lifting with our legs, and in this example, I'm saying that's like the youth, so young men or whatever, we've been straining our women by making bad decisions from the head, from leadership, eldermen, leaders. If you've ever done any, whether it is exercising or if you're moving or whatever, people always say lift with your legs, not with your back, because your back is actually a very sensitive place. Regardless of how many exercises you do or whatever, your back muscles will nowhere near be as strong as your leg muscles. But if we're making bad decisions, choosing to lift everything and deal with everything in our community and putting all that pressure on our women, yeah, you're going to have back problems. And we do. Women are sick. I mean, both men and women in our community are sick, but is it like one of the number one killers for women is like heart disease? Because they're carrying pressure that they shouldn't be carrying. And that's a result of bad leadership, bad men, bad service. And it sucks, but it's true. This issue is mainly because there aren't a lot of men to do the raising, to do the service. They're not choosing to do that because the thing is, there are men there, and I'm gonna been talking too long. So but the thing is that there are men in our community, but they're making poor decisions. Whether that's a result of, again, a lack of images from their fathers, grandfathers, and so on and so forth, or just ultimately not having the awareness to be like, yo, I need to change my behavior because what I'm doing is damaging to myself and damaging to my community and damaging to my future. But we are very selfish creatures at times, and we're usually encouraged to be selfish. This is a rant a little bit, and I'm going to get back to these notes so I can stop this video. As I was thinking about this video, there's that saying, boys will be boys. And that's such a terrible saying because it's two things, I guess, come to mind. Boys will be boys. It's neglectful, and I get that is true, but boys will only be boys if you allow them to be, and if you're not actually serving them and raising them. So whenever you have a situation, boys over there doing something stupid or foolish, boys will be, no, don't let them be, don't let them do that. Don't let them continue to be a terror. Don't let that happen. And the other side of it is you're just neglecting him. You're allowing him, young boy or whatever, you're allowing him to live and go through life without guidance. We got to stop that. We got to stop carrying on these ideas and thoughts. And, there's that saying, particularly it's about moms, that moms love their sons and raise their daughters. Well, we need to raise our children. We need to raise and love them, Again, I don't have children yet, but I understand that concept. Even without kids, even in our relationships with other people, there needs to be rearing and loving at the same time. And again, we as men, even if we don't have good relationships with our fathers or with our parents or whatever, we can parent ourselves. And that's a common phrase that I've been hearing lately, is that there's a need to reparent. And I'm sure that's what Clay is having to go through, even with his counseling and therapy and stuff like that. He has to reparent himself. He has to be there for himself because maybe his dad's not going to show up for him. Sadly, again, like he mentioned, I think they asked him about talking to or his relationship with his father at this point, and has he apologized for the stuff that he did? And in a, I guess, covert kind of black man kind of way, he was kind of like, yeah, we talked, and my dad sort of, in essence, he sort of apologized. And the reality is, again, if you've been in his shoes, if you've experienced that, and if you have any level of awareness, that wasn't no real apology. That didn't really happen. That's probably something that Clay has to just accept. My dad's not going to show up for me the way that I need him to. He's just not going to do it. And it's heartbreaking. And it sucks. Having that realization, that revelation that maybe they're at their capacity. Saying my dad isn't going to go any farther, especially if he's not going to do any internal work himself. This is as good as it's going to get. The situation, say parents don't apologize. It's actually if you're hungry, but I know that Clay needs that apology. He needs his father to show up for him, but it's also the reality that it's a very high possibility that won't happen. So he has to reparent himself, and we all have to do that. Going to therapy is one of those things so that we can get the tools and get the resources so that we can make these changes in our lives. We can stop that cycle. We can stop the cycle of having to, as men, having to show up broken in relationships, having a negative impact on the women that we're with just to wake up and do the necessary work to become better. Because it's the case for a lot of men. When the relationship is getting ready to end, when your spouse is getting ready to leave you, when your girlfriend's getting ready to leave you, that's when you're oh, snap. I got issues. I got problems. I need to fix this. Or after she's left already, after you've been dumped and you're trying to move on, but you keep hitting this roadblock. And if you have that level of self-awareness, you're oh man, I got some issues. I need to deal with this stuff. We don't have to do that. we don't have to continue in that cycle. It's not good for us, and it's not good for our community. It's not good for our sisters. What we can do, though, is we can use examples like this. We can use, sadly, Clay's story. We can use the story of other men without having to sacrifice, use, and abuse our sisters just to get to a better place. We can use these examples. We can use tools and resources like therapy, like YouTube, like books. There are tons of books out there about how to develop and heal from our trauma. There are tools and resources out there that can exist and that we can use apart from relationships. We can stop depending on the labor and heartbreak of women to actually do the work to become healthy, comprehensive, and beneficial men. But we got to stop being afraid to be vulnerable. Stop being afraid to admit we're jacked up and got issues. So a lot of us do. All of us do. You know, we were born and raised in a capitalistic, white supremacist, misogynistic, misogynoristic, patriarchal society that has us all jacked up. Like there's so many isms that have impacted us. So we all need help. We all got issues, and we have to stop being afraid to get help and to ask for help. So again, I'm so grateful that Clay was able to admit, I'm getting therapy because we need it. And the thing is, whether you're in a romantic relationship or not, get therapy, get help, do the work to heal from trauma, to identify your shortcomings and learn how to become a comprehensive man. As a term that is coined by Jason Wilson. Check out his book, Cry Like a Man. He has 2 books, Cry Like a Man and Waging the War Within. I think it's the second one. Get both books. They're both great. Check out his YouTube channel. Jason Wilson has a lot of great stuff helping us to escape the prison of emotional incarceration. When you do that kind of work, you're on the right path to become beneficial for yourself, for others, and for glory. So again, 3 things that I really got from the season, and more particularly this reunion, is the impact of fathers, the importance of therapy, and the influence of images. How all that is crucial and critical to our development and our growth as Black men. And like, we got to do this work. We got to do this work. We got to do this work. And again, we have the opportunity to break generational curses, to change the negative cycles in our community. But it really starts with us realizing that, I got issues. I got problems. I need to get help. I need to go to therapy. I need to read these books. I need to stop using people, using women to grow. And again, I apologize on behalf of men, and also apologize to the women that I've done that to. Because I've been an F-boy. I've done dumb stuff. That's why I'm trying to be on the trajectory of becoming a beneficial man. Like, I'm trying to be. I make this stuff because I'm trying to get there too. Like, and I want to share what I learned with others. But I thought this was a great example from the Love Is Blind series. I hope Clay continues to do that work to get whole and healthy, whether he gets back in a relationship with AD, or whether he has a relationship with anybody else, or whether he's just single for the rest of his life. Just doing that work so that he's healthy and whole is important. And we all need that too. We need to be whole for ourselves first before we can be whole for other people. But all right, I've been ranting and talking long enough. Thanks for checking out the channel. Like, share, subscribe, all that stuff. Leave comments. Talk to y'all later. Peace.